we have always believed that the future must be one that embraces both people groups because their future is together. But to achieve this just and sustainable solution hoped for, we face many challenges. Today, our theme is Israeli dissidents out in the field. So we're delighted to welcome Rabbi Arik Ascherman. He has led Israeli human rights organizations for over 26 years. He's the executive director of Torat Tzedek-Torah of Justice, founded in 2017, which works for human rights to be observed for both Jews and non-Jews. Arik is the former director of Rabbis for Human Rights. I actually first met Arik about 20 years ago at one of ICAHD's rebuilding camps. Arik has had deep involvement with ICAHD over the years, and he's contested the demolition of Palestinian homes, evictions, and the displacement of Palestinian people. We also welcome Guy Hirschfield. Guy is Torat Tzedek's field coordinator in the Jordan Valley Shepherd Community Protection Group. Guy is also involved in a separate project, which is called Looking the Occupation in the Eyes. It attempts to bring the reality of the occupation to non-activist Israeli Jews living in Tel Aviv. Guy also comes with many years of experience of grassroots activism that demonstrates solidarity with the Palestinian struggle. I wish to say that we appreciate that Arik will be celebrating Shushan Purim on Thursday evening, and we apologize that many in the Jewish community in the UK, Europe, and Israel will be celebrating Purim or about to begin celebrations at this very hour. Okay, so now let me turn to Arik and Guy. I'm going to start with a round of questions. I've divided them into 3 groups, so we'll work our way through these, and then after that, we will have a time of Q&A with our speakers. I'd like to start by each of you telling us a little bit how you realized the way Palestinians were being treated and felt that you wanted to stand in solidarity with them. Arik, please, and then Guy. We're getting Erika unmuted.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, so I back in 1981, I thought I would go straight from university to rabbinical school, but God had some other ideas, and I wasn't accepted. He said, we want you to reapply, but we want you to do something out in the world first. And I had heard about a program called Interns for Peace, through which I actually lived in an Israeli-Palestinian village in the Galilee for almost 2 years, doing community work. You know, in some ways, the issues in the occupied territories, everyone will define occupation differently, are a little bit different than inside the Green Line, inside the 67 borders, but still, it was an introduction to me of the realities of Palestinians, and although I was mostly working with Israeli Palestinians, started to already learn a little bit about what was happening over the Green Line, and that just connected to the way I grew up, where I was taught that a basic part of what it means to be a Jew is to be concerned about universal human rights and social justice, and it was pretty clear to me that what was happening here was not the values that I had grown up with.
Okay, thank you, Guy.
Guy was having a bit of trouble connecting. He just tried to reconnect. Okay. I hope he's on now.
Well, while we wait for Guy to return to us, want to say a little bit, Arik, about the ways that you are demonstrating your solidarity with Palestinians out in the field in Area C and East Jerusalem. And then when Guy is back, we'll have him catch up.
Okay. I mean, I think he should be here somewhere, but I don't know what's happening. Let me start by saying that, back in 1997, when we founded ICAHD, I think that a central tenet as part of the overall position of the occupation was to stop one of the main tools for controlling Palestinians and dispossessing them and leaving as much room as possible for Israeli expansion also over the Green Line. You can't build, and then the land stays freed up and available for takeover. And over the year, but the flip side of the question is, then what do you do then to actually take over that land once you prevent Palestinians from utilizing their land? And so one of the illusions always was, I mean, it's partially true, that it's through building settlements. But it turns out, we've known for many years that the fastest growing methodology for taking over Palestinian land was not through building buildings, but through agriculture. Because, see, what the guy is saying, if someone can try to be in touch with Guy, oh, here he's trying again, let me see. He's trying again. I'll just tell him that I'm just letting him in again. Does anybody see if he's in? The administrators?
He is trying to join. He is trying to join. Yes, I can see.
All right. So you prevent Palestinians. He's trying again.
Yeah. I'm
admitting him here. Because it's flashing on my screen to ask him to admit, so I'm doing that.
Yeah.
You prevent Palestinians from using their land agriculturally, which is even broader than where you might build. Then you start farming it yourself, and then you say it's yours. And now we've gone even another step. In February, a year ago, there was a conference of Amana, one of the main settlement organizations, and Zev Hefer, one of the main settlement leaders for many, many years, said shepherding outposts are much more effective than a settlement for taking over and controlling Palestinian land. Because you just need a few tents and a little herd, and you control 1,000, he said 1,000 dunams, and some of them actually much more than that. And so solidarity, to get to your question, with Palestinians starts, from my point of view, first of all, recognizing that, that we have a shared humanity. What's he trying to say now? He's trying again. Would it help if somebody else admits him rather than I?
Yes, I keep clicking as well.
Let me just try to call him here and see. He says he keeps on getting thrown out.
Oh.
Gets thrown out. Okay, so someone else press and not me this time.
Yeah.
And see if it works.
Yeah, he is trying to join.
So I'm not clicking him. Can somebody else click him?
Okay.
It says he's joining.
Yes.
So if I start as a religious Jew by saying that every human being is created in God's image, that there is something fundamental, whether you put it in religious or non-religious terms, that connects each and every one of us as human beings, which is much more important than what separates us, then I have his obligation to every human being, certainly including Palestinians, where I have, as a part of the dominant race, the dominant ethnic group here, a privilege and power, then I must put my money where my mouth is in terms of solidarity, and if the heart of the oppression of Palestinians, whether it be inside the Green Line or over the Green Line, are various forms of dispossession, then certainly I must do everything in my power to try to prevent that. And again, something that served me really from the beginning of my career is it has to have two aspects. The one is what was so important when we started ICAHD in terms of being on the ground. But it's not enough just to be on the ground. You have to connect what you're doing on the ground to the bigger picture and working with the people that hold power. And so it's having one foot in both places. And that's always been, as much as possible, my strategy for change is not being just in the Knesset or in the courts or in the international community, and not being, you guys trying again, not being just on the ground, but combining those two things to bring what's happening on the ground into the corridors of power.
Okay, thank you, Arik. Yes, and I know that certainly from the time you were working with ICAHD to what you're doing today, it has meant that you have stood in front of homes when bulldozers have arrived. Could you describe that a little bit, and
Sure.
What it means to stand in front of a bulldozer? What difference does it make at the time a home is being demolished?
Guy says he's in, by the way, now.
Okay, well, if you just want to say a few words about that, and then I'll move to Guy.
Okay, so I would first of all say that, I'm 62 now, and I think when I was about 60, my wife said to me, you're not getting any younger. How long are you going to do this?
Yes.
And I said, basically, as long as it's necessary and as long as I'm able. And unfortunately, it's still necessary. And thank God I'm still able. Maybe it's still necessary because we use not always the best strategies, but that's certainly where we start. And a second principle, I would say, is we say in the Jewish tradition, when nobody is acting with basic human decency, you have to be that person. And we have many Israelis who theoretically, on paper, are anti-occupation, and they agree with so much of what we stand for, but they stay in their comfortable homes or coffee houses and say, isn't it terrible? And many of them now is what we call occupation fatigue. They just, enough of it anymore. I know it's wrong, but we don't want to talk about it anymore. And so some of us have to actually go out and be there again on the ground. And sometimes it involves doing scary things like standing in front of bulldozers or staring down, being surrounded by violent settlers. And I've been attacked personally countless times just in the past year, physically. And what's it like? I mean, at some point, maybe it's stupidity or it's faith. You say, well, nothing too bad is going to happen to me. Although, of course, we know that, of course, people have been run over by bulldozers. But you also say, if you've got to be the person. No one else is going to stand up. You've got to be the person that stands up, even if it means taking personal risk.
Right. Excellent. Thank you very much, Arik, for starting on this subject. And now let's see if we can get Guy in. Guy, are you with us? If you unmute, and we'll see you. And my question to you is, if you would explain how you came to realize the injustice that was happening toward the Palestinians that led you then to your activism, and if you would describe some of the activism that you've been involved with.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you, Guy.
Okay. So at least I won't put video because it will be too much on the line.
Okay.
So good evening. And I will try to answer it. I was all over my life, I was involved in some part of my life. But 12 years ago, when it was all the evacuation in Sheikh Jarrah, it was a big evacuation and big resistance against it. And it was back then that I decided that I can't sit anymore in my place and just complain what Arik just told now, to be one of those Israelis. So I started to go there, and very quickly I found myself in the south of Hebron with the Ta'ayush. I was there with them 6, 7, 8 years, but 6 years ago I started the same activity in the Jordan Valley, accompanying the shepherds, and this is what I'm basically doing today. And also another project, I will speak about it later. But what was the end of the question?
Well, for you to talk a little bit about what you're doing now, where you're going. You have mentioned the Jordan Valley.
Yeah, so it's the Jordan Valley. It's a very huge area. It's 30% of the Palestinians' Palestinian lands, and it kind of down from out of the radar for most of the Israeli and the international community, because the Jordan Valley have some place for the Israeli as a security belt or something is not connected to the occupation. But a few years ago, it was all the time under occupation, but a few years ago, they started also the outpost and the violence. I'm trying to be gentle and more polite than usual, but still, I'm calling it a terror nest of the Israeli settlers and whatever, all the outposts, the illegal outposts. So now we have a few of them in the Jordan Valley, and they are trying like to make the Palestinians community to leave the area. So we are trying to be beside them on a daily basis, and also when they have demolition, confiscation, arrest, and all other things that the occupation bring within. Almost more than 6 months from now, I started also a project after I've been almost a year in the democratic struggle in Balfour. I met Israeli people that I was kind of not speaking with them. I wasn't part of them. And we've been together in Balfour, and then I started to see that like they don't know nothing about the occupation. They don't know because they don't want to know, but they still didn't knew about it. And a lot of them, after they realized what's going on over there, they joined us on the ground in the occupied territories. And 7 months ago, we started together a few activists of the occupation and few activists from Balfour protest, a project called Looking the Occupation in the Eye. We are bringing one day for 24 hours having a compound in the center of Tel Aviv. We're speaking with the people about the occupation. We have big TV screens. So we're putting materials from our activity and what's running on the net. We are going on bridges with big signs against occupation, and also in one of the major circles in Palestine in solidarity with the Palestinians. It's something new that involved a lot of new people that wasn't connected to the activism of the occupation, and hopefully we shall get more and more people. So basically, this is what I'm doing.
Excellent, excellent. Before I go back to Eric with a couple of questions, in terms of what you've just said, Guy, regarding this activism that you are doing now, trying to educate people in Tel Aviv, what kind of interest is there? Are you attracting more people? Do you feel you're making headway?
First of all, I believe that the solution will come just when the international community will decide to end it. But I think we need to prepare the Israel community and to put it back on the table, because it's something that you don't speak about it in Israel. I don't know how to say it, but the way the Israeli news media showing the occupation, it's completely different. And when I let people see what's going on and make them see it, some of them starting to think different. It's a slow change, but for me in the Jordan Valley, we are double the activists. We are not a lot today, but we double it with new people from Balfour and the democratic struggle. In Tel Aviv, we still trying to convince the people to join us. They're not joining us in the ground, but even if they will just start to speak about it, won't be shame to say they want a solution and things like this. This is part of our target, and I think slowly we shall do it with all other organizations and everything else is going on.
Very good, very good. So Eric, I see notices from you from time to time, and you are calling for Israelis to go out with you. It could be for a protest. You know that something special might be happening, say in the Negev or at another location. When you go places like that, do you then get transportation? You get buses organized? So it's very much this first awareness that you're bringing to them. At what point then do you start with protests and educating them to really stand up to the other Israelis, whether it is the army, the police, the settlers? And could you talk a little bit about them and that type of interaction that there is with the settlers, the army, the police, who's defending who, and so forth? So could you unpack some of what that is like, please?
So, you know, there are different kinds of activities. There's a new coalition that's formed among various Israeli organizations trying to capitalize on the kind of newfound attention that's been in the last few months regarding settler violence, often more concerned when it's settler violence against soldiers or Israelis than Palestinians, but also to some degree against Palestinians. And there's been a series of large mass activities with hundreds of people and buses and all that kind of thing. A lot of our activities are in small groups in cars. The stuff that we do, I mean, sometimes again, like when the last time that I was involved with an ICAHD group and we did some of the olive harvest, you know, we would have volunteers coming out in a minibus. Generally for us, but it's small groups, which is what we need practically. And of course, while all too often the people that come and join us are the already convinced, every once in a while you do get people, and again, Guy has just done this amazing work, as he said, bringing these people that started in one place and really had no idea about the occupation to come out and see what's going on, and then sometimes people do wake up, and again, I basically do believe in the basic goodness of my fellow Israelis, and that but they've managed with the help of our Israeli demagogues to create a bubble for themselves, to not know what's going on, and sometimes it's even a painful trauma for them when they come face to face with things that they would rather pretended don't exist. In terms of soldiers, settlers, the army, some of the most amazing days that Guy and I have had are talking with soldiers. And first of all, there's these young kids. If you tell them that we're not in Israel proper, they think you're insane. And if you tell them that they are defending an outpost, which is not legal even according to Israel, you know, the settlements are legal, illegal according to international law, but legal according to Israel. The outposts are illegal theoretically according to Israel, although it's all been exposed all the ways that the government supports them. They think you've come from the moon. And you show them a letter which confirms this, and they don't know what to do with it. And then since they've all been told that we are self-hating Jews getting money from anti-Semites from around the world, and if, in my case, I start talking to them from the Jewish tradition, they are totally thrown for a loop. And some of them, there's just no progress, but many times they start out angry because you're wasting. Now they had to come and deal with you rather than being, you know, just hanging around the barracks or something like this, or they're mocking. But you unpeel and you unpeel, and some of them finally say, you know, I'm going to think about, you know, I haven't had anybody take off the uniform and join us yet, but I do have some of them. They say, you know, I get what you're saying. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to go and talk to my commander about this. We're going to look this up. One time, a guy spent like an hour talking to some of these soldiers, and they came back the next day. We went home and talked about what you said. I mean, and so you know, when we have so many millions of people that we need to get to, you know, the one-on-one isn't quite quick enough. But it does show that it's possible to get to people. Now, one of the things that to put it mildly, Guy and I would disagree about is whether to talk to settlers. I mean, that's just a total red line for Guy. There are certain circumstances. I even have all these young settlers that call me at night. There's a lot of serious ethical issues here because you know, this was another one of the cardinal principles that we really started with at ICAHD, is that we are partners with Palestinians. We are not going to use our dominance, and we're even junior partners. because we're in Palestine. It's the same thing I do, by the way, if we're working for Israelis in public housing. And so I can't go and speak without their permission or in their name. But if they call me at night or something, I will talk to people. Most of them are just totally, they're just calling to be mocking. But some of they actually have been something that's, I teach a Torah lesson. Does that change any of them? I don't know. But I do believe that in the possibility that every human being can change and even must change. And so I don't know.
Thank you. Guy, would you like to comment on any of those points as well?
I will add that we are doing almost the same, like he started it's small groups and everything. I will just repeat, but what he says, what you are not agree, is the way I see it, and I also want to take it out, is that for me, they are the enemy. The settlers, also the forces over there. This is something I have also, not just with Arik, I have it with all the new activists, because it's really hard for them to understand that the Israeli police is part of it, the army is part of it. I'm not talking about the settlers and the way I call them or whatever. Like Arik says, we are not agree about it, and I think this is one of the problem of the Israel society. They are not willing to see it in that way, and until we are not going to see it in this way, they will keep working together. And just on Saturday, settlers attacked soldiers, and something is really wrong here, and the Israel population don't understand it. That's it.
Yes, okay. Well, a bit earlier, you mentioned that Israelis, most Israelis don't really understand the reality of what is going on in Palestine and the brutality that is happening there against Palestinians. So we know there is a little...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. It was interruption, so I have to ask it again.
Okay, I said earlier in this webinar, there was reference to the fact that Jewish Israelis are not aware of the reality for Palestinians, especially in the occupied territory. Probably they don't understand what's going on in the Negev, in the unrecognized villages. There is a little bit of alternative media. Do they engage with you? And what about international media? Do you actually have opportunities with journalists?
Not as much as I think we should try to with the international media. And for the Israeli today in 2022, you can't say that, we can't say we didn't knew about it, because you can see it. You can see it on the main TV channels or in the main newspaper, but in the Facebook, in all kinds of places you can see it, but people trying to ignore it. They don't want to speak about it, like we don't want to know what's going on there. So this is the problem, and this is why we brought the compound to Tel Aviv, that to make them see it. And it's not nice for them, but a lot of them don't like it. But this is the way to do it, because they don't want to see it by themselves. So, and we're trying to the media and everything, but it's really hard in this today to do it in Israel. It's not really popular to be human rights activist and those kind of things.
Right.
Thugs came in and broke Guy's rib a couple of weeks ago in Tel Aviv, not out, you know, in the West Bank, because there's a lot of people who do not want any danger of Israelis who might become about to think differently to be exposed to these uncomfortable truths.
Right. So you are each putting yourselves on the line. Yes, each been injured. You have been arrested. I know, especially Guy, I think, has been arrested many, many more times. Can you tell us what is happening now in Israeli courts? I remember an occasion when, well, more than one occasion, Eric, when ICAHD has been with you to court. Was that when you were still with Rabbis for Human Rights, before even with Torat Tzedek? But you go to courts as well on behalf of some of the cases. You follow what's happening in court. So can you comment on that for a few minutes? And we're getting ready then for questions. So if people in the audience want to add questions now to the chat line, but let's have a little focus now on Israeli courts and some cases.
So, you know, I'll talk about the courts and the government. You know, I had zero expectations from this current government. And I have found a little bit of difference, that there are some people to talk to, and even some changes in some of the police behavior. In terms of the courts, there's been a debate for many years among human activists, rights activists, whether we should use the courts or boycott the courts. Whether even going to the courts is a fig leaf. Again, just like everything else, in the same way that I can't talk to settlers behind the backs of Palestinians, I don't think we as Israelis can make the decision on our own whether or not to go to the courts. That has to be done with Palestinians. It's not our decision alone to make, even if there are courts. And in one sense, the fact that every once in a while some justice is done in Israeli courts for Palestinians, very often not. But even when there is justice, let's put things in perspective. You know, I grew up, you know, in the United States, where the whole principle of being a trial by your peers, okay? Palestinians can't go to a Palestinian court for justice. They have to come out with their hands out for justice in an Israeli court, of which they are not a part. You know, there are Israeli Palestinians on the bench and in the Knesset and everything, but there are no Palestinians from the West Bank in the Knesset. They can't vote for the people that are deciding their fate. They're not judges on the courts that decide their fate. They're not on the committees that decide whether they can build or can't build. ICAHD and Rabbis for Human Rights at the time were part of a coalition that went to court specifically about that, to return planning authority to Palestinian hands in Palestinian communities. And although the judges were very clear, you could see it on their faces, they saw there was a problem here. In the end, the head of the three that were, whatever it's on, you know, said, we're not going to undo these things that have been forever and ever. And they went begging to the government to throw them a bone, to give them an excuse not to accept our petition, and then they got it. And so that I believe in going to the courts, certainly when Palestinians ask us to, even if for no other reason, because according to international law, if at some point we want some of these things to be dealt with in an international court, and the problem is the international courts have no teeth. They can decide whatever they want, and it doesn't change anything almost what's happening in Israel. But even if you want to go to international court, you're supposed to show that you've exhausted all remedies, possible remedies inside Israel, and they've all failed. And I don't believe in letting people off the hook. I want to put in their face that what they're doing or not doing. But I don't have any illusions. And even if you look at one of our greatest victories in court, which was the Morar High Court decision, which to this day governs the obligation of the Israeli security forces toward Palestinian farmers. And it's made a difference. Many Palestinians are getting the land they couldn't get to for 10 years or more because of this. And it's been chipped away by the people that were against it from the beginning and want to turn the clock back. And because the court today is more conservative than it was at the time, we're very afraid that if we were to go back to court about what way it's not being obeyed, we could lose what we've got. And I just had a conversation yesterday with the legal advisor's office for the occupied territories, who are supposed to ensure, and at one time did at some ways try to ensure, although they're part of the army, that this order, that this decision is enforced. And they said, that's not really our job. They said, well, maybe behind the scenes we can help a bit, but it's really not our job to tell the rest of the army that they have to obey the law. I mean, it's really insane. But that's literally what I heard just yesterday. And from a legal advisor, they're supposed to be the legal authority. And so, yes, I think as long as Palestinians ask us to, at least, we need to use the courts. If Palestinians were to ask us to boycott the courts, I think we would have to do that. And I do so without huge illusions, but do believe that I'm not going to let people off the hook, that they should understand what we see as their obligations according to international law as human decency and everything else.
Excellent, thank you, Eric. Guy, would you like to say anything about Israeli courts before I hand over to Duncan? And
very short. I don't believe in Israeli court. I'm trying not to be to go for them. And just yesterday, for example, the Supreme Court was sitting on a case on Fire Zone 918. And what
which
I'm
is
trying
where?
to say, it's in the southeast of Hebron. And if you will see in the last few 2 months, okay, the only decisions that we hope will save from the Palestinians places, it's the places that the international community says to the Israeli government, you are not going to do it. It's Sheikh Jarrah, it's Khan el-Ahmar, it's Fire Zone 918, and maybe another case. Okay, this is places that I believe in the end the Supreme Court will decide for the Palestinians because the international pressure on Israel on these cases. All the other cases, we are losing. So it's make my point about the international interfere more stronger for me, because I'm coming from the place I love Israel. This is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm staying here. But I don't believe in this in the Supreme Court. I don't believe also. I have also an argument with Arik about it. Since the new government, the Palestinians' condition just gets worse because the right wing, the radical right wing, are trying to challenge this government, and this government is too weak to deal with them. So the Palestinians suffer because of it. And I said in the beginning, I'm less polite. I'm saying the truth as I see it, but this is me.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you. Duncan, can I ask you to unmute and start the Q&A session? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Linda. My name is Duncan Taylor. I'm a treasurer for ICAHD UK, and I've been sort of monitoring the chat box and just wanted to ask our two speakers some of the questions that have been asked by participants. The first one's by Kate. She wanted to know why Israelis don't actually recognize the cruelty of what's going on in the ground when most have actually served in the IDF themselves and must have experienced and been complicit in presumably some of them carrying out cruelty directly to, why can't, Israelis actually see the reality on the ground? And Norma sort of supplemented that question to say, well, especially nowadays when so many people have mobile phones and post the footage of abuses that carry on the ground. So could you just explain the mentality? Why can't people see what's going on the ground?
Yeah, there was a, okay, go ahead, Guy, Vaksha.
For me, they don't want to see because then they realize they are ugly. How ugly they are. Israel in the last 20 years or even before get much more to the right and much more religious. And all together with the saying like there is no partner in the other side, make it really not popular to be a left or a peace activist or human rights activist. So they prefer just to ignore it. And, you know, I all the time saying that in the news in Israel, when something happened, it's starting when the Palestinians like stab or shoot the soldier. They never speak about what make him do it. Sometimes it's a week before, sometimes it's something that happened to one of his families. This is the way the Israelis see the occupation. Like they have nothing to complain about. They can go like look how they live in Syria, in Iraq, in Lub. It's got all kinds of excuses that the Israelis saying to themselves. And you know, even now with Ukraine, that it's also the people of Bibi, for example, are for Ukraine and for Russia. Sorry, and it's also something that you in Israel. The way they see the Ukraine-Russian war is that I think Smotrich says that we have to be careful with be in the Ukraine side because after it they will try to say that it's the same year. So it's all kinds of things that they make the Israeli try not to see it and to take it out of their life. And our target is to bring it back to them.
I think there's two main factors. There's many others, but I'll speak about two. The Jewish people would be not the only candidates, but one of the strongest candidates for the somewhat, I don't know, the title of most oppressed people in history. Yeah. And that does something to your soul. We are people with scarred souls. And, you know, the psychologists tell us that people who are beaten as children are more likely to beat their own children. Mm. There was a 19th century rabbi who said, several decades before Herzl, Theodor Herzl, someday we're going to have a state. And the Torah is warning us. He talks about the Torah warning us. It says, when we have the power, don't treat others the way the Egyptians treated us. Okay? But that's almost going against human nature. And the basic Israeli outlook is the whole world hates us. The whole world's against us. The world that didn't lift a finger to stop the Holocaust and everything else. And history and history and history. And therefore, we're going to look out for ourselves. And no one's going to tell us what to do. And everything is through those lenses of this hateful world that's out to get us. And that's the way we see the outside world, and that's the way we often see Palestinians. If right now many Jews are celebrating Purim, which is a story about an evil person that wanted to kill all the Jews, and we won, we beat him, basically. Some people say, look at most Jewish holidays, and the basic line is, they wanted to kill us, we won, let's eat. But it's a joke, but it really is ingrained in our mentality. There was a movie that was done about how the Israeli educational system takes the holidays from Purim to Passover, the Egyptian oppression, and then to the Holocaust, Memorial Day, and then finally Israel Independence Day, to embed in us this mentality that even if we care, and many Israelis will say, it's not that we're against the Palestinians or anybody else, but we're going to look out for our interests first. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is that poll after poll shows a sane majority of both Israelis and Palestinians who say, we want peace, but they don't. I often think we don't need another peace plan. We need a binational psychiatrist because, and by the way, from my point of view, an important part of what we do is, first of all, because we're concerned about justice and about human rights. But the fact is, countless times, I've had Israeli parents say, Palestinian parents rather, we want our children to meet you. My child has seen this and this and this and this happen to us, and he says, I want to grow up and be a terrorist. Mm-hmm. We want him to know that not every Israeli comes with guns to demolish our homes and steal our land and beat us and so on and so forth. That there are also Israelis who are willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with us. I wish I could find a way that Palestinians could also do something similar for Israelis, as strange as that sounds. But our demagogues have capitalized on this, so that your average Israeli will say, well, of course we would do anything for peace. We would turn over every stone for peace. We don't want to be oppressing anybody. We don't want to see ourselves as oppressors. But what can we do? There's nobody to talk to. They don't want peace. And of course, you would hear similar things among Palestinians. But that's those are two of many other reasons. But those are two big ones.
Okay, thanks very much for those responses. Now another question, or there are two supplementary questions really regarding the recent Amnesty International report that was published in February, basically describing Israel as an apartheid state. So could one or either of you describe what the reaction to the report has been in Israel, and how Israelis can actually square thinking of themselves as a democratic state when, large parts of the world see them actually living in an apartheid state?
Israelis, for the most part, see that as a continuation of just what I was talking about, that this is another anti-Semitic ploy about a world that's out to get us. And again, our demagogues are very good. They say, how can you possibly talk about apartheid inside Israel when Israeli Palestinians vote and all these kinds of things? And of course, what they're doing, it looks like guys trying to get in again, is they are trying to, you use as a wedge the difference between the popular understanding of apartheid, which is like South Africa, and the international legal definition of apartheid. And you can find all kinds of reasons why what's happening in Israel is not apartheid as it was in South Africa. In other ways it is, but in many ways it isn't. As I said, if you can't use the South African apartheid model as a definition of apartheid when the definition of apartheid in international law is different. Okay, but I'll be honest. And this is another, if Guy's back on, yes, he is. Another area where we disagree. I don't use words like apartheid generally. And the message I try to give and send out both to my fellow Israelis in everything I've written about this, and to also Jewish community abroad is, you don't like the word apartheid, ignore it, but you still have to read this report, because the Amnesty report was very well researched. There's a couple things here and there that I had questions about, but for the most part, extremely accurate. And I find it unfortunate that many people will use the use of the word of apartheid as an excuse not to read the report and deal with everything that's in the report, which is precisely why, from my point of view, I don't like to get caught up in a word. I mean, there is the arguable shock value of using a word that puts a name on something. There are certain aspects of international law which are triggered if you define something as apartheid. But I think certainly for the Israeli community, I would like them to read and deal with that report and not get stopped because of the word apartheid, because all the stuff in that report are things that anybody that really has any interest in a more just Israel needs to confront and deal with.
Okay, thank you. Guy, are you back on again, Guy? Can you respond to that? It sounds like he might not be, unfortunately.
He's muted, but he's on.
Okay.
Guy, if a guy can unmute himself. Or can somebody unmute him?
It's working now?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. I have problem. Sorry, but I have problem with the line. Problem with the line. אריק, על מה אני צריך לחזור? מה הייתה השאלה?
השאלה הייתה, איך ישראלים מתייחסים לדוח של אמנסטי, וברגע אחד אני אמרתי שלצערי שהרבה אנשים רואים את המילה אפרטהייד ומתעלמים מכל הדברים שבתוך הדוח שהיו צריכים להתמודד איתם. זה בגדול מה שאמרתי.
Yes, and most Israeli don't know yet about it. It was in the headline for 2 minutes, and just after it, that Lapid says they are anti-Semite or whatever, or Bennett says it. This is what most of the Israeli, they didn't open it or try to see it. The right wing, yes, what Arik says, that they have the apartheid word, so they can cancel it all. But the majority of the Israeli people haven't noticed this report, imported report.
Okay. So we've got time for one more question. It was just one question regarding the administration of justice compared to what Israelis within the state of Israel and settlements, what system of justice they're under, and the military courts that Palestinians in the occupied West Bank experience. So could maybe just explain some of this, how those two systems work.
You know, the Palestinians go to the military court. It's something completely on criminal issues. It's something completely different. Just if we will be arrested together in the demonstration, usually I, as Israeli, will spend 3-6 hours at the police station and go home. For the Palestinians, it can make 48, 72 hours and even more. For every small thing, they take them to the military court. And I don't know how it was in other countries, how it is, but comparing to the Israeli system that we don't really have justice inside Israel, it's completely over there, it's like a nightmare. But also us as activists, we can see how they treat our complaints in the Israeli system and how they treat the settler complains against us, it's completely different will be the way they will behave.
So in terms of the courts, you know, I had a lawyer that was working for me, and she said that her first class, her first lecture in law school, professor got up and said, if you were coming here looking for justice, you've come to the wrong place. Law and justice are almost never the same thing, although they're actually synonyms in the Torah. And there's discrimination everywhere. You look at the percentage of Ethiopian Jews who are the people who are incarcerated, young people in Israel, and they look at what's happening at African Americans in the United States, and they say there's no difference. And it's of course only worse for Palestinians, where the military courts are a system for grinding people up. And I know that particularly in the UK, there's been a lot of traction in terms of the way minors are treated in the military courts, where it becomes not only a system of injustice and trauma, but also of breaking up communities and getting everybody to start suspecting each other and this kind of thing. Last week, you know, as someone who does still try to use the system, and we've actually made some progress, as I said, from my point of view, small amount of progress in terms of inching towards the security forces doing something to stop the incursion of these settler flocks on the Palestinian lands. There's been a little bit of progress, and one of the braver landowners sends me a video because he's face to face with a settler on his property, his farmland. And I tell him, first move away, because the same thing happened back in May, and there was a pogrom basically, when the settlers then called their friends, and then, you know, soldiers stood by as cars were destroyed, as if someone was put in the hospital and everything else. But I called the police, and again, as opposed to what used to happen even a few months ago, the police actually came. And who got arrested? The Palestinian. Because it turns out, you know, that what the police officer did was he checked the license plate. It turned out that this car was stolen, and that probably was true. But I called the police and say, well, nothing to worry about. This is about 4:30 in the afternoon. We all understand that he didn't know the car was stolen, and he'll be out soon. Well, at 10:30 in the evening, they decided to keep him overnight. And another person who was all just in the car with him was finally released at 11 at night. You know, and if they'd been Jewish on something like that, they wouldn't have been arrested. They would have been asked to come in the next day and be questioned. They wouldn't have waited for hours in the police station. I mean, sometimes there's an issue of having an Arabic speaker, this kind of stuff, but they wouldn't have been there for hours. The investigator himself said this was a judgment call to put him in jail, and they said apparently there was some contradiction to some of the things he said. But a Jew would not have been treated that way. And that's even before you get to a court. Actually, in this case, the prosecution the next day had the common sense to understand when we had a lawyer talk to them that they had no case whatsoever and release him. Although that was in the morning, and because of the regulations, he didn't actually get released until 5:30 in the afternoon. So the whole system becomes another part, the whole part of the system to try to tell Palestinians, keep your heads down, don't get uppity and expect justice anywhere.
Okay, Arik, I think I'm going to have to close there because I think time is short and I need to hand back to Linda. So thanks very much for that full answer.
Yes, thank you. It's been absolutely fabulous having you, Arik, and you, Guy, with us this evening. We do have to start drawing to a close. What I'd like to happen is if you each give us a final thought you want to leave with us as internationals, whether it's your message of what you want us to do, what is giving you hope, certain pressure points, very vulnerable situations in terms of villages or cases for people you just want to mention to us. So about a minute each, and then I've got to provide our closing announcements. So thank you. Guy, can you start, please? Can you unmute, please, Guy? Okay, Guy? Hello, Guy? You are unmuted. Can you, okay. Are you coming in, Guy? I think, Arik, we better hand over to you.
All right. So first of all, I want to so much express my appreciation for ICAHD UK and the work that you do that is so necessary because although I am one of the people who thinks that change will only come about when there's also a change of hearts and minds of Israelis and Palestinians. I don't think it's only the international community alone, but we need the international community. We need the international pressure. As Guy said, there are communities like Susia, Khan al-Akhmar, and whatever that are standing today for all the wonderful work we do here because of you. And we've worked and we partnered on issues like the Sumarim family, which is going to come up again soon, a family that is in danger of being evicted from their home in East Jerusalem, and so many other cases. We need you and we appreciate you. That's the first thing. And the only other thing I would, I guess, maybe say in terms of summary is that as Jeff would always say, let's not just look at the little examples, let's look at the system. And the system called apartheid, don't call it apartheid, call it this, don't call it this, is one of control and dispossession. And don't get mixed up by all the things getting, the people try to fool you with. And the essence of our work, whether it's on the ground, what we need from you in the international community is to stop this dispossession. On the ground, there are shepherds who have been able to resist the unwritten Israeli policy of trying to move Palestinians out, if not of the entire West Bank, at least out of Area C, and concentrate them in areas A and B in the urban areas because of our presence. But we need to do it together and understand that whether it's home demolitions or denying people access to their agriculture and pasture lands, or any one of the unrecognized villages in the Negev, wherever it is, it's all about dispossessing Palestinians to leave as much land in the hands of Jews. And as a Jewish patriot, that is wrong. And we need together to work to make sure that that is stopped for our sake as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Arik. And now, Guy, I hope we're going to be able to hear you. Are you there to give us last comments? Your last thoughts?
Guy, if you can't speak, you can write me something and I'll translate it for you or something.
Okay, while that happens, hopefully I'll just give you a few announcements, please. And while that happens, Malcolm is going to bring up some slides. So, and these are about some forthcoming events. Okay, I think the first one now is about our forthcoming ICAHD conference. Can we go back to the first one, please? Just scroll up. So ICAHD is going to have another conference. We try to do this annually. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, it is going to have to be online instead of face-to-face in London. The focus is the demolition of Palestinian homes put in and Israeli colonization marches on. So looking at focuses of demolitions in the occupied territories, the state of Israel, and then putting it all in the big picture. So check our website, register for that. 23rd of April, please. Next slide is also because the situation on the ground has improved, we can resume our travel. ICAHD recommended study tours, extended study tours, 11 days in November. And Eric referred to the fact that, you know, during such type of activities, we do try to engage with Eric, and we hope that will be happening again in November. If you're interested in coming, nothing compares with seeing the situation on the ground. So these are very political study tours. Next slide. On our website, you'll find many dates of other events happening. Some of the ones related to ICAHD UK and our chapters. You'll see future webinars. So addressing, you know, what happened in South Africa is one coming up soon. Then on the 27th of March, it's Friends of Sabeel North America, Jeff Helper speaking at that with Diana Bhutto, Jonathan Katab, and somebody else. We've got then our National Day Lobby for Palestine, National Lobby Day for Palestine in Parliament. And a few days later, we can be out again on the streets, calling for the end of apartheid, freeing Palestine. And then ICAHD UK is going to be at the Greenbelt Festival in August. Jeff will be there with a stall. Do come along. More details on our website. Lastly, do join ICAHD. If you're not already a member, your membership allows us to carry out the programs that we've got. We send out monthly newsletters and also monthly actions. You can take bulletins. So all the information is on our website. Go to it, stay engaged with us. We depend upon civil society joining with us doing these things. Okay, if we put away that slide now, do you have a message for us from Guy, please, Eric? We need you to unmute.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. He says, thank you very much. And I can't wait to the moment that I can be less polite. Guy for himself was being very polite and less blunt than usual. And he's saying, but I also hope that the world community, I'm waiting for the day when the world community will not be treating us with kid gloves in the same way, and will help us to, and we need to work with you to bring about more international intervention to end the occupation. And he apologizes that he lives in a place which doesn't have great reception, and that today it was worse than usual, and he apologizes.
Well, thank you for that message that you've relayed from Guy to us. Thank you, Eric. Really very, very deep grateful thanks to each of you for joining us today. The fact that you come, not with just information, but you are actually on the ground, standing up for your beliefs. It's so inspirational to hear you. And I just hope that it will make our entire audience here today, or those listening to the recording, that they'll find of this on our website again. So spread the news of this webinar, listen to it, be inspired to go out and to do even more as we stand in solidarity with the Israeli dissenting voices, with the Palestinians, and keeping that picture of it's got to be a just and sustainable peace for both people groups, for the good of both of them, for the morality that we want everybody to find within them, their dignity, a better way to live in this world, peace with justice. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. See you again soon. Thank you.
Amen. And if I can say as a rabbi, one half a word, another message at the end of the Purim story is nafochu, that everything can turn around.
Yes.
And together, as dismal things look now, we are going to succeed in turning this around. Together, we're going to do it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful to end.